Most small business owners rather, don't realize they're undercharging. Not because they don't know their worth, but because pricing is far more emotional than logical. Fear of rejection, comparison to competitors, and the urge to be affordable often pull owners away from what their numbers actually say. In this episode, we're going to break down the psychology behind price resistance, why we hesitate to raise rates, how to calculate what we should be charging, and how to adjust pricing confidently without losing clients. If you've ever wondered whether your prices truly reflect your value, this conversation is going to change the way you think about money, confidence, and growth. Welcome to the business behind show business. The business behind small business. Yeah, show business. Why not?
Small business. Sometimes it feels
Yes.
like show business.
Sometimes it does. In every episode, we dive into one area of what you need to build a lasting business. Well, we are going to start our show by peeking behind the curtains of someone else's success, and then we're going to drill down on how you can apply it to your own business. We are your hosts, Savannah Stone, and
Tiffany KO.
no one gets to a million without getting a little dirty. There's a lot of business behind small business, so let's get to it. But before we get started, we like to connect the past to the present with a story you can relate to. So let's look back at the history of today's topic, shall we? All right. In the late 1990s, Apple was in serious trouble. Personal computers were largely viewed as interchangeable hardware, a commodity. PC makers were in pricing race to the bottom, and Apple just couldn't compete on cost. You remember in the late 90s, like Apple was just not even a thought for people. Anyway, so when Steve Jobs returned, because he was gone for a minute, he realized the company's problem wasn't its product, it was how it priced and positioned value. Rather than trying to make computers cheaper, Apple did the opposite. It made them more expensive and then told a story to justify it. They shifted the pricing psychology from computer as a tool to computer as identity and lifestyle. The iMac wasn't just a machine. It was design, creativity, and experience. That mindset carried over to iPod, which launched in 2001. Competing MP3 players sold for $100 to $150. Apple entered the market at nearly $399, more than double the industry average, and sold out within weeks. Why is that? Because Apple didn't sell storage capacity. It sold freedom and emotion, thousand songs in your pocket. But the real genius came with iTunes in 2003. Music had been decimated by illegal downloads. Napster, anyone?
I
Instead of
contributed.
fighting the, yeah, I mean, I certainly took advantage of LimeWire every now and then.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, instead of fighting the behavior, Apple restructured their pricing model, not around the product, as in the albums, but the behavior, as in the song downloads. At 99 cents per song, iTunes made legal music feel affordable and convenient. The company created a pricing structure that aligned with how customers wanted to consume content, and it completely reshaped the music industry. So within 2 years, Apple wasn't just selling devices, it was selling an ecosystem where premium pricing felt natural because the perceived value had shifted from hardware to experience. So, Apple's transformation teaches us a few powerful lessons about pricing psychology. So, one, pricing communicates value. If your price is low, people subconsciously assume your value is too. What Apple did was prove that pricing can attract more customers when it signals quality and identity. Two, restructured pricing means restructuring perception. Apple didn't just justify its pricing with specs, it reframed the conversation. They turned emotional benefits into the foundation for pricing power. Three, they aligned pricing with customer behavior, not tradition. iTunes succeeded because it priced according to how customers wanted to buy. They turned emotional benefits into what clients actually need. So they went from hourly billing to value based packages, which is something I think our clients, or rather our listeners, can also utilize. And lastly, consistency creates credibility. Apple never discounted its core products. That consistency built trust. Clients learned that value wouldn't fluctuate. In small business, frequent discounting confuses the market and weakens perceived worth.
I agree.
Yes. So let's
Yes.
talk about it.
Yeah, I agree. Apple never discounts. Dang it.
I know.
Okay,
I know,
well,
but
they
they
rarely discount.
created they really did create a environment in which people see it as, well, it's worth it.
Yeah, I'm an all Apple product up, so I'm one of those
Mhm.
people who buy into it, and I absolutely love it, and I did resist it for many, many years. I was Android and PC up till about 15 years ago, so I get
I
it,
know it.
and they're right.
Yeah, and also they when you think about it, they were able to do it for 25 years so far.
Yeah,
Because
there was a little bit of a pride.
they're still raising prices, and
Mhm.
people are happily
Yeah.
paying it.
Yeah, yeah, yep, again, case in point right here. So
Me too.
yeah, I probably won't go back to a PC and, stay on the Apple track. But it's amazing though because they don't spend a if you think about their commercials and everything they do all the way down to like the annual fall drop of their products, like they don't spend a lot of time talking about functionality or the specs. Like they probably spent like they'll talk about like the one functionality that everybody wants. And the rest of it is all just like stories and like how
Yeah,
it makes you feel and it's all about emotions. And because of that, they get to charge higher.
right. So when you take that and you connect it to our small business owner listeners, what do you think is stopping them from pricing differently?
Probably just, oh, you probably see this all the time. It's really I don't know if imposter syndrome is the right way to describe it, but it's a little bit of that, right? Like you don't feel like whatever it is you do, whether it's a service you sell or the product you have is worth a higher dollar.
It's always they're not going to think they're going to leave,
Who would ever
or
pay that?
they'll never pay that. They'll think I'm not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll push back.
It happens over and over again. So I think it is that, and then I think I certainly did it too when I first started.
Mhm.
My first business, which is just asking for way too low of a price, and also believing some people who do commoditize what you do, especially you have a service, that you can't get beyond a certain price. And oftentimes that limitation is just in our heads, and it's just bad self talk for ourselves. Did you ever kind of go through that?
There's a saying called scarcity mindset, right? And to me, I feel like when you are bringing yourself, if you're not valuing yourself, then others aren't going to value you either. If you are making everyone think that you can't live without them, that creates a level of vulnerability that can hurt you in the end.
Yeah, and the thing is, no matter how great your pricing is, and no matter how great your product is or your service is, somebody's always going to say no. And I think a lot of people, especially if you're just starting out in business, you take that no as reality, as in like, oh, it's not good enough or it's not worth that price, and people are laughing at me. Now, there is a real thing about overpricing yourself, right? But there's nothing to be laughed about. It's just, you put it out there, you see the reaction, and then you refine and adjust and go back out there again. And people say no, not to like you. They're just saying no because it's just bad timing for them or it's all about them. It probably mostly has nothing to do with you at the end of the day.
Well, and it's interesting you should mention that because also I think a lot of owners get caught in the comparison trap.
Mhm.
They will compare themselves to other businesses, or they'll say, my pricing is very competitive to everyone else. And when it's sold like that, and it's very common to sell like that, everyone expects and assumes that your expenses, your margins, your profitability for everyone across the market is the same when it's not true. You have to, I think that you should price according to what your math is, your costs are, as opposed to what the market says. Because if you have 20 employees compared to 5 employees, margins are going to be different. If you are a remote business versus a business that's in an office versus an office in the country, an office in the main street of the city, everybody has different profit margins. So you have to price yourself, I feel, according to what your costs are, what profit margin you want to have, what your math is.
Yeah, I think margins and cost is probably one of the factors. I think the hard part is trying to nail what the perceived value is that's out there, right? Comparable to somebody else. I mean, there is such thing as market value, right? That's where you overprice yourself. It's that if there's so many alternatives that people can go out in the market and get at a vastly cheaper price, there is no way they're going to go with you no matter how amazing you are, unless you solve a problem that is of that value.
Yes. And also, if you find that your math is making you twice as more than someone else, to me, that tells me that there's something that you're in your overhead that is costing too much.
Sure. Yeah. Possibly. Yeah, definitely. It's possible unless you're starting out, right? And you have to have a certain set of overhead, but it's always a good reality check to make sure that your cost isn't also wildly out of proportion, which would make it harder for you to get some margins off what you're selling. But at the end of the day, it's two things. You got to watch your cost and be realistic about it, and then you have to compare it to market because that's what everybody else is comparing it to. And so hopefully you don't want to be one of those people who are trying to race down to the bottom because that's pretty hard to win unless you're like Timu or something. Unless you want to be in that market. But for the most part, if you're in a service-based business, you probably don't want to be the cheapest one out there unless
Yeah.
you really feel strongly about that brand and tagline. So you just got to be very confident about the pricing that you set for yourself and the value you can bring for it.
Confidence is most certainly lacking with many business owners that are worried about, and hey, I get it. You've been there, I've been there, where it's
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, like I really need to be charging this because my costs have gone up by this, and I don't know how to market this to my clients or whatever it is. And if I raise my rates, are they going to leave me? It goes back to that whole confidence in yourself, in your pricing, and to know what you have to offer is of value. But then you do, in the end, still have to make a decision. So when it comes to making a decision on your pricing, there have to be numbers involved, right? So let's talk about the types of pricing that our listeners can take into consideration, the different types of ways in which they can price, and then how they can formulate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, the easiest way to not lose your shirt is kind of what you were saying earlier, which is don't, use your cost, right? Figure out how much your cost is, add a margin on top of it, add a percentage, and then use that as your baseline price. Now, what throws that wildly out the window is also like what you said, is if your cost is also out of proportion, then your final number may end up way too high, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why it's also good to also compare that to what's in the market as a temperature gauge to what you
Mm-hmm.
end up with. Now, I think the other way you were talking about is value pricing. So
Yes.
you sell the outcome, you sell the focus, you sell the solution, and you price the solution. You don't price the time it takes to get there to do it. You don't price the cost that goes into your product. You don't price the materials, but you price the value of the ultimate outcome or solution to the customer. And so clients are usually willing to pay more for outcome than they
Mm-hmm.
are for effort. So that goes back to the whole fixed rate versus hourly rate versus project rate instead. If you do like hourly rate, it's always like trading time for money, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Trading hours for dollars, as I say.
Exactly. So you end up leaving a lot of money on the table because you could be solving an amazing problem because you're amazingly good at it. You could also do it really fast. And so if you charge an hourly rate, unless the hourly rate is inflated enough to actually match your expertise, you're kind of selling yourself short at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
so good, right?
No.
There is capacity-based pricing. At least you're telling me there's capacity-based pricing.
Fun word
I'm
to
not
hear.
something is telling me there's this thing called capacity-based pricing. So capacity-based, I think the way it is, you're kind of working yourself backwards, right? So you're starting with what you want to make basically, and then you're working yourself backwards as to how much do you have to charge per unit or per hour, or whatever your thing is, to be able to get to where you want to be at the end of the day. So it's kind of working your way backwards. So I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I would say that if you really don't know how to price yourself, use all three, right? And see where you end up. Hopefully, I mean, probably what's going to happen is two of the ways is going to get you to almost the same number. And the third one's going to be like a weird outlier, but at least you
Yeah.
kind of know what that is. And then, I mean, like I said too, like always just go to market, check the market and see what the market says. And if somebody's charging like 3 times higher than you, then that's good. That's opportunity. You should really go study that and see, hey, why is it that they get to charge 3 times higher and they're still in business?
Right. Right.
You got to find somebody with a little longevity in business, so it's a proven model
Right.
before you put any trust in that.
Yes, agreed. All right. So let's say you've done your calculations, you've done your formulas, you've figured out what pricing works for you. How do you suggest, what is your suggestion for business owners to move forward with that? Like, how do they essentially sell their new pricing to their clientele?
Do they have another pricing beforehand, or they're trying to change it, or is this, like, brand new to market, you think? Or both?
No, like
Okay.
if they're like, well, honestly, I feel like what people were charging in 2020 and what they're charging in 25, there's like a 3 to 5 times upsell or upcharge or whatever. And they were able to raise their prices and convince us all that that was okay, right?
Yeah, and it's funny enough, all the excuses they use were supposed to be temporary, like, "Oh, it's due to COVID, it's due to supply chain." It's funny
Right.
how that has not gone back down
But
yet.
like they never changed it.
Yeah, it just the problem's still there 5 years later, what do you know?
Never went back down.
I think the best thing too is to test your pricing out. So once you set a price, go talk about it and see what people's reactions are, right? Like if they say yes a little too quickly, you're probably undersold. And if they take a little convincing, okay, you're probably in a good area, right? If they immediately laugh in your face and go, "That's ridiculous," okay, opportunity to explore more.
I will say that when it came to me, because I didn't change my pricing, I changed my structure. And I did make more value-based tiers. I created value-based tiers,
Hmm.
which helped considerably because I have clients that are all over the place. Like I have clients that are just books and that's all they want. And to
Yeah.
me, there's a level of value to that. But then there's another level of value when you want us to have accounting conversations with you. And then there's another level at which you want to have CFO types of conversations, right?
Hmm.
So when it comes to those kinds of tiers, I felt like there's different levels of value. And,
Hmm.
I feel like other small businesses can do the same. Like there are different like a bronze package, a silver package, a gold package, if you wanna package your rates, let's say. But to me, tiered pricing helps it be a more consumable change.
Yeah. It depends, I think, on your service and your client base, if
Of
tier
course.
pricing makes sense. But I think for the most part, as long as you keep it simple, so tiers makes it simple for your customers to understand what options they have. Plus, like most things, there's a reason why they say, give three options, right? Because if you give three options, most likely everybody's going to choose the middle option because the other two options really just act at anchors at the end of the day. And so that also just is a pricing or a buying strategy rather, or a sell strategy, whichever side you're on. But tiers are great. I just think that, as long as you just make it easy for the customer. Don't overthink it. I think we run into business owners sometimes who like really overthink their pricing and they spend a lot of time needling over it.
Yeah,
And sometimes you just at some point just has to pick one strategy and just go with it and
yeah,
then see what happens. Now, the only thing I would caveat against, which is what happened to me, is don't underprice yourself so much in the beginning. You rather start high than start too low because trying to raise
yeah.
your prices afterwards is a pain in the butt. I think you
Mhm.
you have that experience too. I've had that experience too where I completely ate it. And that is one thing that I'm always wary about doing going forward is just
Yeah.
starting too low.
Well, and
Yeah.
I've also seen this been done. I've also seen this done. Yeah. I've also seen this done and thought this was done well, executed well, and also made it consumable. Was to say we are going to be raising our rates in a three-part process. We're going to raise it to this in 3 months, and then in 3 months this, and then in 3 months this is where we're going to land.
Mm-hmm.
So, like over a 3, 6, 9 month period, this is what the rate is going to turn into for whatever service it is. Especially if it's that you had priced yourself way too low when you first started out, and now you're like,
Yeah.
"Holy crap, I really should have been rated at the or charging this rate."
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's good too.
What do you think about like the built-in escalations? There's some contracts I've seen where they say, "Hey, every year we're gonna raise it by like 3%." It's almost like the equivalent of like employees and colas and stuff like that.
I don't have a problem with that because I feel like if you're telling me that you're gonna rate, then my decision to move forward with you right now, right?
Mhm.
Like, if I have a problem with it, then I'm not gonna choose you from the
Mhm.
get-go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think it's not unreasonable to assume that like your rate will change over time. And I think if any
Mhm.
customer find that completely like offended because you decide to, raise it. And I'm not talking about like a wild 100% raise or anything like
Right.
that. It's just you got to increase it because either like, just distinct, other things are getting more expensive. So you also need to get a little more expensive to cover your overhead and things like that. I think
Mhm.
that's normal. So don't feel like it's like a set it and you're done and you can never touch it again because then you will eat it after time.
Mhm. No, I agree. Now, I know when I set my pricing, what I did was I looked at what historically people were paying and then what my profit margin was
Mhm.
and noticed a trend. I
Mhm.
noticed that I was spending more money and making less money, so my profit margin was shrinking. So
Mhm.
obviously the cost of things that I was using in order to do my job was going up, but my AR was not matching it, right? And I was very transparent with my clients when I said, "Hey, like I need to match what the current market is. However, this is how I am offering you the service now. Obviously, you're going to do whatever way it is that works for you because I'm sure we also have listeners who are selling products. And so you don't have to you don't have to explain yourself to the point at which they're like, "All right, I get
It's
it."
too much.
Yeah. Yeah, like, you don't have to make a PowerPoint presentation over it. It's just a matter of, "Look, this is what your price is going to be. This is what we're changing it to, and with it, we're going to be bringing you more value and more, this, that, and the other." And either they say yes or they say no.
Yeah, I remember I went through the reason I had to change my prices was because I also changed how we did our services. So I had to
Right.
do a little shift or evolution in the company. So we kind of repositioned ourselves a little bit. And it was drastically different enough that everything was different.
Mhm.
And so I think I gave all so I identified the clients that I needed to raise the prices on because I also had a new pricing structure and a new price level to hit to even
Yeah.
like hit the baseline of the services we were providing. So I identified there was like a handful of which clients that were grossly under. And so I
Mhm.
just gave them like basically like I feel like I ended up giving them like almost 6 months notice just because I knew that this was my fault for changing. It's not their fault that I just, had grown up into a different business.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I just gave them 6 months, and then I just let them know too that, no harm, no foul. This is kinda where we're going with the business. This is different than what you had before, but if you need to switch providers, we're even happy to help recommend and help you transition to a new
Yeah.
provider. And so I think I only lost, like, maybe 1 client out of that whole thing, and it was just because it was a tiny little client that just we had too many bells and whistles for that size, so I
Yeah.
totally understand, and we ended up just helping them transition off to a different vendor,
Mhm.
and there was no hard feelings or anything like that. Everybody understood. It just is what it is, and it wasn't too much disruption, which was nice to
Yeah.
anybody involved. So it is possible. It's just not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true. All right. So, no, it's not easy for our listeners to do. However, we do have some recommendations for them to take with them. And hopefully, continue their research on figuring out where they're going to go with their journey of pricing themselves. I will say that on the opposite side of that, I'll add one more thing. I will say on the
Mhm.
opposite side of that, I knew a business that we had worked with that had found themselves having had they were charging way more than everyone else. And it had nothing to do with like way more. And the thing is, they kind of pulled that number out of thin air. It was not a number that was based on any
Wow.
calculation.
Okay, that
And
makes
they were
sense
like,
then.
why are we losing customers? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know that I would pay $100 for a candle. Maybe somebody else would, but I know I wouldn't. So
As an example.
maybe
Yeah.
you should not be upcharging so much. Like maybe that's the problem. So they totally switched gears, not just bringing their prices down, but in order to make it make sense,
Mhm.
they used to be a company, or rather, they used to be a storefront that only sold brand new items. They
Mhm.
started to sell very gently used vintage items, refocused everything, and hid the the bringing down of the prices hit it into the fold of them now being a more high-end vintage store. So they did lower
Smart.
the prices of their newer things,
Mhm.
but then the cost of the vintage items that they brought value in with the vintage stuff, so it kinda evened
Yeah.
itself out.
Yeah. So
I
that's
thought that
yeah,
was
you can get
brilliant.
kinda clever, right? You can get clever with it. Although I do say that kind of I'm glad they pivoted because I do feel like some people don't want to let the idea go, even though you end up with a price point that you almost have to charge to make your business make, like, profitable, and there's no way anybody's gonna pay that.
Right.
So you have to pivot and you can't hold on to that. But I'm sure you've run into the same clients where you're just like, okay, it's time to move on. Like you gotta have
Yeah.
to think something different for this to work out in the long run. But you know, like luckily that your client had somebody like you to tell them that.
Oh, thanks.
Because not everybody does, right? Some people's like, oh,
No.
okay, let's
No,
see
and
what
you
happens.
have to find your person that whomever that person is that's going to help you see these things because sometimes as the owner of a business, you can't see outside of yourself. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you can. Some people have that ability, but some people can't. So it's important to be able to see the world outside of yourself in order to recognize whether or not you are, doing by doing your own math and are hitting your own goals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, yes, and it's very liberating, I think, once you get to the right price point where you know you're, like, at the right point, you're maybe even a little bit of a premium, and you don't apologize for it,
Yep.
and you know it's the right place, so even if you're on a call and the person you're talking to, the prospect is like, that's too expensive for me," like, you don't even feel bad about it because you know you're worth the
Yep.
price. I always found it, like, a compliment that when I'm, like, talking to then I'm kind of presenting what it is our service does and all this stuff. And then I show them the price and they're kind of like, whoa, right? But their reaction is, you know what? I'm gonna grow into that one day. I'm gonna grow up and
Yeah.
I'm gonna come back and be able to afford that because that means that everything you put together is worth the price. They're maybe not in an economic situation to afford it, but that's okay, right? Your value and your pricing, your perceived value and your pricing are actually in line. And that's where you want
Hmm.
to be.
Yep. Well, there's a saying that goes, put your money where your mouth is. And we're drilling down a bit further here to connect what we've discussed at a granular level to tangible success you can take to get to the next level. So, Tiffany, what do you have to advise, to offer, opine,
First of
suggest?
all, who puts the money where their mouth is? That just sounds disgusting.
I don't know. Maybe money used to be, no,
Edible?
money's always been dirty.
No, it's
I
totally
am
always
curious.
been the
I should look that
dirtiest
up.
thing
Like,
ever.
where does that even come from?
Exactly. Like, it's
Your
just
money
such
where
a
your mouth is.
weird saying, right? So while
We
you're
have so
looking
many
that up,
weird sayings.
I got some book recommendations.
Yes,
We do, yes. I got some book recommendations while you're looking that up. There is The
I should
Confessions
look that
of the
up.
Pricing Man by Herman Simon. It's how global companies turn pricing into profits, so lessons that can be applied for small businesses. There is Pricing Creativity by Blair Eanes. It's essentially like a practical guide for service businesses on how to kind of break free from like the billable hour trap, which is also a very good topic because I personally am not a fan of that hourly billing model, but I get it. And then last but not least is The Psychology of Price. Love the topic, by the way. I love the title, by the way, by Lee Caldwell. This is why people perceive prices as fair or expensive, and how to use that insight ethically so that you can price better yourself. All right, outside of books, there's a couple apps. There is Profit Well by Pat Paddle. Helps you analyze pricing sensitivity, churns, revenues to see if your current rate is up to snuff and you're not leaving any money on the table. There is, of course, our favorite accounting systems, QuickBooks Online. Just kidding. It's not my favorite. I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite.
I don't know that anybody loves it.
That's true. It's such a love hate, like necessary evil sometimes. It's kind of like, ugh. And then FreshBooks, right? So, of course, the bookkeeping will kind of help you identify like your cost and like your profits so that you can make sure that you're kind of tracking things the right way to know if your pricing is correct. And then there's the value based pricing calculator. So, this is an online free tool that allows you to kind of experiment with value driven pricing instead of doing the hourly billing. So, good hunting there.
Mhm.
And of course, local resources, small business development centers, free advising, free mentorships. Great place that if you don't feel like you have any, but like sometimes you don't want to discuss the stuff with your friends and family, right? So a place like that, it's like a great resource for you to get some free advice to be able to kind of help you with your pricing strategy. Chambers of commerce, score mentorship. Always have good things to kind of help share. Just again, just people who in the score are usually people who are retired, have a wealth of business experience, and they're always somebody good to kind of like bounce your ideas off of. So did you find the answer, Savannah?
I
Why
think
do
I
we put
did,
money in
but
our mouths?
it's kind of murky. Okay, so AI says the exact origin of put your money where your mouth is unclear, but the phrase first appeared in America around these or 1940s, likely stemming from gambling or betting customs. The saying, which means to back up your words with actions or a financial commitment, is rooted in the idea of a person who is overly boastful being challenged to demonstrate their claims through a wager. Still doesn't help me.
No, I just have this like image of somebody trying not to get caught by the cops or something and stuffing money in their mouths.
Like, I'm so confused.
Okay.
All right. So,
Okay,
I mean,
AI, not a
whatever.
great
I just
answer.
thought, like, are you like putting the money in your mouth so that you, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so that's what AI says. Anyway.
We're
All
gonna have
right.
to
So
try again on that one.
I have lots of great suggestions to make as well. And by the way, all of the links for these are going to be in our show notes. So, first book is Monetizing Innovation by Madhavan Ramanujam and George Tackey. Tackey? Take? I don't know.
That was a
How
that
did,
was a good
yeah,
attempt.
you like that? Yeah.
This
This
one.
book is focused on how to design offers around when customers are willing to pay. So that I think is pretty cool. The Art of Profitability. That's a pretty well-known book by Adrian Slowatsky. Why am I giving all the hard names? 23 profit models told through stories. Short, smart, and memorable. And then lastly, The Strategy of Tactics of Pricing by Thomas T. Nagel and George Mueller. This book takes a deeper analytical look on pricing structure and value communication. It is the go to playbook for serious strategists. All right.
Okay.
So, if books are not your jam and you would prefer something on the technical front, we've got Hello Profit. Hello Profit is an app that has a visual profit dashboard that spotlights which products or services actually make the most money. Then there's Clockify, time tracking that reveals how much unpaid work there is behind your rates. It's a reality check for service businesses. I love Clockify. And then lastly, there's Toggle Track, which is similar to Clockify, but it's a little deeper reporting. It compares your estimated versus your actual time so that you can predict future work and price it out a little bit better. And finally,
That's
I
neat.
have a few local
Hmm.
resources. Your community colleges or university small business institutes tend to have courses that are affordable and short based on pricing strategy, marketing analytics, and small business finance. I will add to that when before I started my business, I took two classes at our local community college. One was intercommunication, and the other was on public speaking. Not because I don't know how to talk around people, but I wanted to make sure because I had only lived in the area of Northern Virginia for about 2 years prior to this, and people in the Midwest speak and understand totally differently than they do here in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So I did that, and that was huge for me. Then there's the Women's Business Center. This is an SBA funded center offering workshops on financial confidence. Why am I having a hard time? Pricing and scaling profitability. Lastly, industry specific trade associations. Join your sector's association to access benchmark pricing reports and peer tested strategies tailored to your field. Because sometimes you do want to talk to people in your industry and you want to understand what they're going through. And I can't say enough about that. Anything else you'd like to add, Miss Tiffany?
I was just curious, did you look anywhere when you first did your pricing?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I looked on Glassdoor.
Mhm.
I looked on what do you call it? At the time it was Craigslist. to see like what people were charging, or rather what they were willing to pay.
Mhm.
I did a lot of research on the internet, and then I also talked to others who were in the same industry to kind of get a sense of what it was, like what the industry standard was around here. Because as you know, it's different here than it is everywhere else.
Sure. And did you end up with a pricing you felt like worked, or did you feel like you ended up with pricing that was out of
No,
sync?
I feel like I have made a natural progression as my company has grown,
Mhm.
because I do check pricing pretty regularly to make
Mm,
sure that I'm not under or overpricing.
got it, okay. Yeah, I ended up
Yeah.
calling some people, obviously not, like, real name or anything like
Yeah.
that. I
I'm
totally s
basically what I did too, like, just to
Yeah,
get a sense of like, okay, well, how much are people willing to pay, or how much are they willing to,
yeah.
or how much are they charging?
Well, yeah, that's interesting, 'cause the only reason I asked that was because none of that helped, by the way, only because, like, I called and everybody was so wildly different that I was like, "Well, okay, so that's none of that helped me pinpoint down the price I was supposed to be at the end of the day." So I just thought that was kind of funny because I was like, "Oh, I secret shopped, I looked online, I, like, asked some people, and I just never got a great finding at the end of the day." So
Well, and also I was doing the things that my before I started my company, I was doing those things as a freelancer and as a contractor, so I
mhm,
already had a good sense of what people were paying. So it wasn't too hard of or too far of a reach for me to figure out what the standard would be in the area, since I had already worked in the area for 2 years at certain rates,
yeah.
knowing what was too much or what was too little.
Well, I will say sometimes naiveness actually helps because I think I ended up at the end. I mean, I went for a pretty high price that I think a lot of people said, "Oh, that's not possible. Like people will never pay that much." And because I was naive and I didn't know any better, didn't have a problem. So sometimes being naive kind of helps too, right? But
Yeah. I will say that I also took great advantage of our local economic development authority and
mm,
the SBDC and like all of that stuff. And, here in Fairfax, we have the Mason Enterprise Center. So I really took advantage of all of the free
you did,
offerings. And the CBP at the time was the Community Business Partnership.
yeah.
So I took advantage of all of the free opportunities in this county, which I strongly suggest for others to do as well, because the people that are volunteering are people with years and years of experience. The knowledge they're going to endow upon you is priceless for me.
Wow, you really did your homework. I feel like a really bad student.
Have you met me? Like, my
Well, I
God.
mean, over the years still, like, it's kinda like, I don't know, every time I, like, compare my homework to you, I feel like I'm like, "I have 3 sentences and you have 10 pages. What the heck?"
Well, so that's the thing. Like I ask like 5 billion questions, and then I make my, like, I need to know where all of the, I have to answer every question before I move forward.
I am like, "3 sentences. Huh, looks about right. Okay, let's go."
Yeah. No, I'm risk averse, as you may know.
No, I
So
think you're a high, how would they call it? I have a client who uses, Kobe assessments a lot. I don't know if
yes,
anybody knows what Kobe assessments are, but it's one of those
yeah.
work style assessments. One of the, pillars is, fact finder. So the higher fact finder, the more you need information before you make a decision. So I'm willing to bet yours is pretty top tier there.
I'd say yes. I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Whatever the highest level is, I would say I am that, or and
I
then
mean,
some.
mine's naturally high, but I think over the years as I've gotten older, like my will has overridden my nature on that one. I'm just like, no, we just gotta go. We just gotta go. We just gotta go. So that's funny.
Clock's a ticking.
I feel like that's how I live my life a little bit now these days. So,
I
okay.
hear you
Well,
on that. All
either way,
right.
whichever path our listeners choose, there is no wrong path. Clearly do what you are comfortable with. But at the end of the day, my last advice would be just go to market and try it on for size and see what people say, right?
Yeah.
And then also, you can always change it later on. It's not set in
Not gonna be the
stone.
end of the world. It's part of owning a business.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, please hit the like button and the follow buttons, all the buttons, and tell all of your friends about us. Our show is on all your preferred podcast platforms, social media, and YouTube. We'd love for you to also share our episodes. All of our links are posted below. Until next time, mind the business behind your business because all great successes start small.